Something that I have been known to do occasionally is, do you ever have your actor kid act out scenes for you to see if they're going to work?
No, I should do that.
I have been known to do that. Unfortunately, it's usually something that's physically difficult. Well, what happens if you attack him over the bench? Will you both break your legs, or will just one of you? So it does take a bit of blandishment, but I think
I'm too much of a control freak to do that. Yeah, although I have had, when there's fight scenes, generally speaking, I have had, especially, like, not so much in this book, there's not really that much fighting in this book, but my previous novel, Crossed, which is about the Fourth Crusade, a friend of mine who is an Aikido, oh, thank you,
that was a motorcycle going by.
A friend of mine who is an Aikido sensei, I gave him the manuscript, and he read through all of the fight stuff and sort of vetted it for me. Yeah.
This is really interesting. It's something you might want to think about doing, actually. I see manuscripts all the time where clearly no one's thought about whether it's physically possible to do something. Right. And that's especially true in fantasy novels, I think, where even though there's gravity, the author is not necessarily taking into account
that there's gravity. Sure. Yeah.
Another thing that I would imagine that a theater background is very helpful with is figuring out how much a speaker can say in a breath.
That's a good point. I never thought of that either, but I probably do that without even realizing it.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed this here a lot, because especially your fight scenes, your verbal fight scenes are especially wonderful, I think, because they feel very real, because people are short of breath when they're fighting, and we would be saying, there's another motorcycle, we would be saying much, much shorter sentences if we were fighting.
That's really, I never thought about that consciously.
And so one of the things my readers know this, I will always say, you have to read your manuscript out loud, especially the dialogue.
I do that. That I do all the time.
And there's just no other way to find out certain things.
I definitely do that. If I was less of a control freak, I would have somebody else read it out loud for me, but I'm too much of a control freak, so I do it myself.
Yeah. Well, how do you get around the tone issue? Because I notice when I read things out loud, I'll occasionally supply the tone I want, especially in a first-person narrative. I'll occasionally supply with tone what I really should be saying in writing, and I won't necessarily realize it if I'm reading it out loud.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's another thing that I think is just intuitive. I don't have the solution to that. The best way to guard against that would be to let somebody else read it, but I'm just too much of a control freak.
I think that's very common.
I am a part of a small writers group, and one of the other women is a first-time writer. She's writing this wonderful young adult coming-of-age novel, and I read hers. I'm the only person in the group that has performing experience, so I'm very comfortable with cold readings. But I think that it's helpful for her to hear a voice other than her own voice, and I'm sort of envious of her that she allows me to do that, because I won't allow anyone else to do it. I just can't. Even though
I see that.